Hello, everyone, and welcome to Earp Sister Feels. This is our episode number 31, where we will be discussing Holy War, Part 1, which is Season 4, Episode 5 of Wynonna Earp. For those who might be new, we focus on the Earp Sister scenes for the most part, but we like to have fun going down lots of rabbit holes, so we will see in what direction we go. My name is Kevin, and I'm joined by our usual crew tonight, so I'll let them all say hello quickly so you know who's who. First up, we have Rita.
Hey.
And Jill.
Hello.
Kylie.
Here.
Terry Ann.
Hi.
Alyssa.
Hey, guys.
And Jess.
Hi.
All right. So, part one of a two-part finale. Certainly a lot playing here. We don't have any, what I call in my notes, solo Earp Sister scenes. We haven't had much of that in the first 5 episodes here, but we do have several scenes with 2 of them involved with several other folks. The first one certainly is after we get all worried about the fire and we have them out on the porch, which made for a lot of fun stuff.
There's so much eye play going on between the two of them now. Like, I don't know. I don't even notice that they don't talk most of the time because I'm like, oh yeah, that's exactly what that's like with siblings.
And I loved that the porch rescue, well, also, like, there was just a lot of childhood things when I remembered. Well, actually, let me just go, like, I'm just gonna spew a couple things here. First of all, it cracked me up that, like, we went from Wynonna wearing practically nothing to bed, and then we went to Way Hot wearing, like, full garbs, and I'm like, what are you guys doing wearing all those clothing to bed? Like, generally we've been, you people wear nothing. And then, this fire alarm was going off and Waverly wasn't waking up. And I just remember a lot of times in my childhood, my parents did a lot of, we did a lot of fire safety stuff. And then one night they actually set off a fire alarm and neither my brother or I woke up. Like, we just slept through it. It's not like, we just slept through it. So I was just like, good on you, Waverly. You're just this fire alarm.
When someone's like pushing you to wake up, it's like, she still didn't wake up.
She still didn't wake up. But then when they got them back, when they got her onto the porch and, she started breathing, the idea of both Nicole and Wynonna just collapsing on her and hugging her, it sort of brought home that, like, she is still the glue that keeps this whole thing together in many ways. Is, Wynonna, she's so important to Wynonna, she's so important to Nicole, and to have them all now, the 3 of them, be able to just celebrate, this moment, more and more. I don't think you can separate the Earp sisters from Nicole more and more.
That's an excellent point. I'd love to hear a little discussion on that because I had that too in some of my general notes. It's changed so much, I think. Oh, and we talked, I think, was it last episode or the one before, quite a bit about Wynonna's growth and how much this season she's definitely doing that and embracing their relationship. And yeah, that's a great example, Jill, of the oneness of the 2 of them being in just that focus of her.
Right.
Well, like what Alyssa was saying with, like, the sort of, like, the eye play between them, their body language is so much more open to including everyone else in their little bubble, which we see it again, like, in the cop shop. We see it on the porch where they have, like, their own, I don't know, little like motions to one another, but their body language isn't like this anymore. It sort of opens up to include everyone else, which goes for Nicole, certainly Rachel, and Jeremy and Doc as well, but I feel like that's a huge part of season 4, where we don't just get them by themselves, we get, like, the whole family.
And they're on other people. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say I loved the opening scene with Nicole and Wynonna, just because it also is giving us that like signaling to the viewer that yes, Nicole is now, she's becoming a part of their family, and she even said, you know, you guys are my family. So I just love that. Just kind of like, yeah, having both Nicole and Wynonna kind of coming together because they both love Waverly.
Yeah, and that
How
wedding
far is it
scene, in that wedding scene, Nicole, or even though it was a dream, so it, you know, you take it with a little bit of grain of salt. It was almost, actually it was a nightmare, but also Wynonna referred to Nicole as sis.
Yeah.
And, you know, it really, like, if we're talking about Earp Sister Feels, like, you know, in many ways, I do think what we've seen in season 4 is Wynonna is starting to look at Nicole as another sister. You know, it never, probably will never, well, not probably, will never come to the level of Waverly. But is still now another sister. And will be at that level. Like, you're now my sister.
Mm-hmm.
Until she hurts Waverly, and then Wynonna would drop her like a...
I don't think that she would drop her, because like it's kind of throughout the episode we see, even though Nicole is realizing she's done all these things, these horrible things, like Nicole or Wynonna's like, no, that's not you. We got to save you. Like, they all know that when something like kind of kooky happens with them, that it's not actually them that's doing it. It's the, you know, supernatural.
Yeah, she's definitely not last one in, first one out Wynonna anymore.
Definitely not. Yeah. And the word growth just keeps coming to my mind, because if you know, from season 1 to season 4, like we've seen them all grow, but like Wynonna and her being able to trust not only herself, but, you know, like rekindling that trust and that love with Waverly, and then it kind of branching out to everybody around them and just bringing everybody in.
Mm-hmm.
There's almost like a settled feeling, which, and maybe, I don't know if that's just the cast having been doing this together for so long now, or if it's actually written in. I'm curious about that, if that's actually part of the script or not. But there's just a, you know how like if you do something for a long time and you just sort of like, you get familiar with it to the point where you don't even think about it anymore. I feel like the two of them at this point have gotten to that level where, and like, yeah, where you can talk with your eyes. Like they're already so comfortable, or they're finally so comfortable with each other, and letting other people in isn't even like something you have to think about anymore.
Well, I feel like with that, and a lot of Melanie's interviews, she's talked about how Wynonna doesn't really feel like she has a use. And I feel like if you see Wynonna's, like any scene where Wynonna is like by herself, you practically have season 1 Wynonna. She's like especially when she was like looking for Peacemaker.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hilarious and she's brilliant, but it's certainly not like the level of sincerity that we've like, you know, come to see Wynonna when she's with literally any of the other crew, any of her other people. So I feel like there's got to be some intention to that outside of like the settling, or else it would feel settled with just her.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I do, you know, I was just going to follow up, like, it is interesting in that she has referred to particularly Waverly, you know, she understands Waverly is now very supernatural. She's a half angel. She's, you know, the guardian or whatever she was. And Wynonna is not anything right now. She doesn't, I mean, they keep coming up with like your magic gun, and she's like, I don't have my magic gun. And Waverly is undeniably still a half angel. And so, yeah, I do think Wynonna, where the first 3 seasons, she was constantly, I have to protect Waverly because Waverly's this innocent, tiny little creature in the world. And now she's like, ooh, belly. Waverly's a half angel and has like this amazing girlfriend that's looking after her. And, who am I? I don't think, she's exerting that, but I do see there is some level of just uncertainty in Wynonna this season.
Yeah, like what's her role?
Right.
And just kind of like not really being her sister's keeper as much anymore because Nicole is there. And just listening to what you were just saying, Jill, it made me think about the scene in the barn when Nicole or when Wynonna and Doc are fighting Nicole because she's trying to attack them, and Waverly comes in and she's like, why are you guys fighting Nicole? And Wynonna kind of looks shocked. She's like, well, she cut me. What's going on here? And like Waverly kind of immediately is focused on Nicole, and so Wynonna has to kind of take that step back because she's not Waverly's primary focus at this point. Now Waverly has shifted that attention onto Nicole. So yeah, it just kind of makes me think what Wynonna is thinking in terms of what is her role here, because she's no longer like one of the main center of her sister's world.
I do like that she hasn't like passed it on to Waverly, like the responsibility though. Like she seems to still want to like share in that. Yes, she's not the heir because there's no curse anymore, and she doesn't have Peacemaker, but she's not necessarily like willing to just like give up and like say, okay, Waverly, you're half angel now, you're the one that has to save everybody. Like she isn't necessarily putting that role on Waverly and giving her that pressure. She's kind of still like, no, I'm gonna figure it out. I'm gonna find a way to like either get back to what I was or to still be useful. And I kind of like that she doesn't just like give in some ways and say, okay, I'm obviously not the person that's like the chosen one anymore, so I'm not going to be involved. Like she's still fighting in her own way, which I kind of like.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I do think it's an excellent point that was brought up that since Waverly now can stand on her own and to some degree with her weird face melting skills and other things, Wynonna doesn't have to feel as protective. And without the identity of Peacemaker and with everybody else being as capable as they are, that's the double hit of what am I, as you said, to the group. So it's one thing to be in the group and have that dynamic of feeling like we're all here. But like you pointed out, Rita, when she's by herself, that's when I think you get some of the natural concerns, especially when she doesn't have Peacemaker. There is no identity there beyond herself. And she still has trouble accepting some of those things, I think. So that, yeah, it's a fascinating way to watch it kind of grow. Because I mean, we touched real quickly. We didn't talk too much about the scene at the BBD office when kind of the reunion, Jeremy with Waverly and with Doc, and then all of them were there for a short period trying to talk about what they're going to do. And yeah, the Earp sister exchanges as part of that. Very quick, very just facial look, a little nod of, we need to do something. Okay, I'm going to do this. There wasn't a need to stop and pause to wish them luck, to give them a kiss for fear of something happening, like we recall going back to the season 1 stuff. So yeah, that it's not something, and this is what I love about the show, it's not something you, or at least I don't initially see it on the first watch, but when I'm rewatching and kind of focusing Earp Sister's side, I'm watching those subtle little differences, and that's where we get so much more out of them now, because the dynamic has radically changed. Both from, Nicole being a big part of it, to even the, what's up with Peacemaker and who am I?
Yeah, and I think about now I wasn't here for last week's, but, there was this notion of, I think when they first returned from the garden and Wynonna and Doc reunited, and Doc was still focused on Waverly. He was like, where's Waverly? And Wynonna went, we know where Waverly is. And, Waverly was with Nicole. And in, not this episode, but the last episode, when nobody showed up to Waverly's little shindig, her slideshow, Waverly's like, where is everybody? And Nicole went, hey, we know where Wynonna is. They're, Wynonna's with Doc. And And so this was a moment where both sisters were kind of recognizing there's somebody else now in their lives. They went through so many years where the most important thing ever in their lives was the two of them. And now they're starting to branch out and there are other people in their lives. And accepting that for better or for ill, mostly for better, but sometimes for ill, they have other people in their lives. And it's something to celebrate. And it's also, I mean, there's a part of it that, that you have to be sad. Like the relationship that they had that was so intense, and it still is intense, but it's not going to be as frequent because there's so many other people now in their lives.
Yeah, and that's a realistic thing too. Like I know with my siblings, like when relationships happen and everyone has their family outside of your family, it does kind of get harder and harder to come together all at once, right? And so just like at the beginning, like you do feel this sort of like person is being taken away in some ways, like not in a bad way, but in like they have to go off, and they have their own life, but it still feels weird to combine the family and add new people. And so I do find that that part of the show really realistic right now in my own personal experiences too. And I like that it's, even though more people are joining their family, it's not seen as a negative thing, because it's like more of a supportive thing, like you guys have said, with like Nicole coming in and now being a part of it, and Doc and Jeremy, and like they're all part of this family, and it's not tearing the sisters apart like it could in some shows. I like that it kind of almost brings them closer. Like you said, now we don't necessarily see them verbally communicate, but you're getting the like eye looks and stuff as a more on the same page type of thing. And I kind of like that the extra relationships aren't pulling them apart in a bad way. Again, that's from my experience. It's always been a good thing when someone joins a family. It's not everyone's experience, but for me, I found that was fairly realistic, and I liked the storyline of that for sure.
For sure. I mean, I feel like this year was the first year that I heard my brother on the phone when I was down in Ohio with my family. And he was like, oh yeah, my sisters came down this weekend. And I was like, oh, my little heart. But like when Wynonna, when she calls Nicole sis, and she like brings them all in, and now there's like other people taking the mantle of like little sister, which is definitely Rachel. And, and Nicole and Wynonna is finding her own role, which I feel like is even more highlighted because she hasn't been like the big sister role to Rachel, even though they're like very, very similar. Like it was Waverly and Nicole who were calling Rachel repeatedly while she was off doing sneaky things, which also in 105 is when Waverly like sneaks off to the trailer park to take pictures of Bobo twice.
Bobo.
I love that you can make these connections, Rita.
I know,
I know. I was like,
Yeah, man.
Maybe I just did a recent rewatch of that episode. But that was like the Fish and Levi episode. But she like sneaks back and goes and takes pictures, and Rachel was like gone the whole time. Just like the absolute whole time. But Wynonna wasn't ever like, yeah, where's Rachel?
Yeah.
Because she's like on her own personal journey right now.
Mm-hmm. Now, one thing I found telling, I don't know how you folks feel on it, we mentioned a little bit the scene in the barn when Nicole is like possessed or whatever and trying to, well, it looks like she's trying to kill Wynonna, but I know there's now lots more discussion in the fandom that maybe she's after Doc.
Yeah.
Either way, throwing knives, either way, not good.
Not great.
Not great. But no, once we have a little fun with the comment about, the gingers being the bleeders. When Wynonna starts to get her going and starts to do her rousing speech, dropping F-bombs about, storming the castle, it's Waverly that's stepping up to tell her, wait a minute, sis, you do need Peacemaker, can't go off half-cocked, we do these together. So it's not Doc, it's not Nicole, it's Waverly stepping up and still doing it. And Wynonna doesn't flinch in that sense. She respects it, and that's very much a switch from what we would have seen earlier in the series.
But super consistent to season 4, though.
Yeah.
She's very much been super trusting of Waverly this season.
Yeah.
Which, plays into everything that we've been talking about her not really trusting herself or not knowing where she's at. But also Waverly stepping up is it isn't like new. It's not that it's not like she was slacking in the other seasons, but she's like fully stepped into a new role and accepted it. And it, I don't know if she's communicating better, but Wynonna certainly
More confident though in that
she
area.
is more confident. Yeah, for sure. And that's a big change.
There's definitely a time too, as an older, I can't remember how many of you are older siblings. Rita and Carly, yeah, Jess and okay, yeah. So like a handful of us are the older of the siblings. Like there's a shift in your mentality that has to happen when you realize that your little sibling that you've been watching out for is fully capable of doing all this on their own. And like my youngest brother and I are 11 years apart, but there's a kid like every couple of years between there. So it was a really weird gradual experience for me, but it's like watching this show now, I'm like, oh yeah, that's they can do it. They don't need you anymore.
Yeah.
And that's a thing, that's a weird mentality to break out of a bit as an older sibling, I think.
I think we all put ourselves again, as an older sibling, you put yourself as like, I'm supposed to teach them stuff. I'm supposed to be the one that hits all the milestones first. Mm-hmm. And then when your younger sibling like kind of almost laps you on certain areas of your life, it's like, oh wait, I'm supposed to be the one giving you the advice. You're not supposed to give me the advice. And there's that little dynamic shift. And I definitely do believe that like, yeah, this season you're seeing more of it. Yeah, from my personal experience, it is a weird, like you said, it's a weird thing to sort of see happen. And a lot of the time, we're only 3 years apart, my sister and I, so it's a little bit different, but like at the same time, she's lapped me on certain parts of her life. And I'm like, wait, no, slow down. Mm-hmm. let me do that first. Like I'm supposed to do it and screw up. And then you're supposed to do it and not screw up. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's weird.
You're supposed to be the smart one.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
But I did really, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead.
I was going to say, I did really like the discussion on the porch between Nicole and Wynonna, with Wynonna being the one to ask about, so, what's stopping you and Waverly? What's, kind of playing that, definitely the older sibling. Mm-hmm. And, hey, I know what's going on here. And yes, I approve, but also kind of bringing it out or trying to bring it out. Nicole really couldn't. It was just, but that was again very un-Wynonna-like to some degree, except for the season, mm-hmm. to acknowledge it, to totally embrace it, not just in a crazy nightmare dream, but to totally embrace it there. That hey, what's going on, and be able to do it. That was a very a nice, a really good bonding one for me. Not a lengthy one, but just a really good way of them not talking about, for the most part, supernatural stuff. Not that it didn't come into the conversation, because Nicole is still, voiding frogs, but yeah. It's still, between all of that, it was some very important exchanges between the two of them about Waverly.
Yeah, I do think that, Wynonna seems to accept that that Waverly's happiness is fully dependent on Nicole at this point. And so instead of rebelling against that, instead of saying, F this, like, I hate this person, they've taken my place, she now has gone, and she was there for a period where, like, I don't know who you think you are, but how dare you come in and, intrude on my sister's life. And she's now gone through okay, this person's worthy of my sister. And so now it's my sister's happiness is dependent on this person. And so I'm going to make sure that this person is also on board. and if not, I'm gonna kick their ass, even if they are my best friend.
Yeah, always.
It's still going to be, in Wynona's mind, it's still going to be like, you better be taking care of my sister. If you're going to be if I'm not the one taking care of her, you better be doing the right job. So I think you're right, Kevin, that scene, like, what is, when Wynonna was like, why aren't you getting married?
Mm-hmm.
What's stopping you?
Yeah, she starts that with like giving her an out. Like, I wouldn't blame you because of all this supernatural stuff if you didn't want to, be in our lives or Waverly's life. And then she's like, no, I love her.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely something that she can ask direct questions to Nicole, because she certainly didn't with Doc earlier. She says, because she even says, like, we never talk about that anymore. She doesn't like bring it up any further. She sort of like puts the ball in his court, and he just says there's a lot we don't talk about. But then she doesn't say anything else. She doesn't bring that up anymore. And we also haven't seen, Waverly and Wynonna have big conversations. She could have had that conversation with Waverly about the engagement and the proposal and like how's wedding planning and all of that stuff. But I think it's a very season 4 decision to have her talk to Nicole about it instead.
Grown up Wynonna.
Grown-up Wynonna.
And all mature.
But I also think part of the reason maybe she's not going to talk to Waverly is since she's not certain why it hasn't happened, that would be more painful to ask Waverly, I think, because then she's going to feel bad about the fact it hasn't, and is somewhat justifying, well, it's supernatural and the garden and da-da-da-da. But going to Nicole shows the strength of it, because if Nicole broke down or cried it out, Wynonna would be fine. She'd rather know that way so she could help soften the blow for Waverly too, is how I kind of saw it.
I agree.
Because I think Kylie, at least in my mind, that goes back a little bit to me, to that oldest sibling sometimes not only being there to teach them things, but also sometimes to emotionally try to support them to deflect things that they might, they won't want to bring up. I don't know. Again, overthinking it in a fun way.
That's what we do best.
No way.
Yeah, but
Just the right
the
amount,
whole Doc and Wynonna relationship, man, that is its own master's course, and that the two of them are just, I don't know. Man.
I love it. I love all of it.
It's entertaining as all get out, but yeah, that is so dysfunctional.
Yeah.
Come on, guys.
Again, I don't know what it says about me, but I love it. I love it.
Well, like I said, entertaining is all get out to watch the two of them try to,
navigate it, but yeah.
Yeah. And in a fun way too, what I loved, to go down that rabbit hole a little bit, the scene when they went to the glory hole with Amon, when Amon is basically flirting with Wynonna, and Doc physically, look at him, he's physically pushing himself in between them because they're getting along way too nicely. So again,
And you know what? And this is because I love angst and drama. I'm now thinking, like, can you imagine the four of them, meaning Doc and Wynonna and Waverly and Nicole, going to the glory hole, and Amon Amon flirting with both Waverly and Wynonna.
Yeah, all of them.
I need Mercedes.
Just Waverly and Wynonna, and then having Doc and Nicole be like, what the hell?
Doc would be blushing, and Nicole would just be like, yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
But like with both, like I can see Waverly going like, oh hey, like she just kind of returned the flirting because that's who she is, and Wynonna, that's who she is, and then having Doc and Nicole in the background being like, what the hell? I don't get it.
Brooding. Love it.
Brooding in the background.
For real.
Yeah.
Now, and so see, now I'm gonna have somebody that I'm just gonna put it out there, like somebody needs to write a fic of Amon flirting with Wynonna and Waverly. Just
every chapter's a new person he's flirting with.
right.
Yeah. He could flirt with anyone.
Nedley, we don't know. Yes, next.
Somebody flirts with both the Earp sisters, and Doc and Nicole in the background going, "What the hell?"
Love it.
That's now what that's my new. I'm gonna put it out there. Any fic writers,
It's happening.
I mean,
Write
Rosita's
that, I'll
back,
read it.
just throw that in there. We can bring Kate back. We can bring Mercedes back.
there we
Yeah.
go.
Everyone flirt with Eamon.
Chrissy Nedley, who knows? Like everybody's
I mean,
around.
Damon can go wherever, and I'll be fine.
But
with
it's
that.
gotta be that they flirt with both the Earp sisters, and both the Earp sisters are amenable to it, and then their significant others are not so amenable.
I mean, this is only the first half of season 4. I wouldn't put it past the writers. It's possible.
Mm.
And it appears that Aemon flirts with everybody. So
Yeah. I love him. So.
Yeah, he
Love that about a person.
knows how to do it. All right, so based on where we're left at the end of this episode, we've got one episode, second part of a two-parter, mid-season finale. Not that it was planned that way. Always got to keep that in mind. Do we have any thoughts?
Rosita,
Projections?
that is my thoughts. I'm so happy.
No,
I'm
on what?
so
Yeah,
happy.
what this might mean again, talking as we have to the Earp sister dynamic, or just the general dynamic of what we think might be at play next week.
I have a crazy thought, and I don't know where it goes.
Please share.
Oh yeah, just bring it out.
So okay, so I haven't rewatched a whole lot this season. I've been trying to just like sort of let it wash over and not overthink things, and I don't really do that anyway. But I watched episode 1 over because I felt like there was some stuff that I might see differently now that this last episode happened, and both Waverly and Wynonna to Doc say, "You came back," when they're in the garden. And I just thought that was weird.
Portals are so fun.
But it's presented as the first time that we see them. So I'm like, but the shirts are all wrong. Like everything's wrong.
Right.
So I'm like, what? When are we?
Well, that's
When
the other
are we?
thing. But that's the other thing.
Yes.
When they did the whole Earp, the Wyatt Earp stuff, and he was talking, and he said about how Doc shot first. I was like, maybe this is a different reality if Doc shot first, and that's why he's like, I didn't shoot first.
Oh,
That was my first thought when that scene happened. I was
Star
like,
Wars
well, maybe he
also.
didn't shoot first. Maybe this is like a Han Solo thing. I don't know. But I'm like, maybe he didn't shoot first, and it's a whole different version, and the Clantons
the
exist
editing.
in this universe, and like, yeah, I don't know. I thought that I had a similar sort of, maybe we're not in the right, that kind of just tipped me off a little bit, but.
Can't get over that. It's just not
well,
right.
and the Doc
And
thing.
real quick before you go, Jill, I recommend everybody watching rewind like 30 seconds and just look at Terry Ann's face when that idea came up. That was like all of us.
Oh.
You're the Rita of this one.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
For real.
It's true. I agree. No, I was just gonna say I interpreted Doc's reaction only slightly differently because when you put it in the context with the clans, and so we had Wyatt Earp at the end of his life, essentially, recounting the best version of himself, the best version of his life, and the Clantons have also said, hey, those Earps, they've written their own history, whether it's true or not. They've written this history. And I read that, I kind of watched that and said, well, Wyatt Earp, he wrote his own history, and maybe it was true, maybe it was not. On the same hand, if Doc says, I never drew first, and I kind of go, you had 184 years to convince yourself you didn't draw first. But maybe you did. But you don't like that part about you, so you've rewritten your own history. It's fascinating what they're doing with history right now. Because, like what is real, what really happened, and who's telling the story, and can we believe the story? And it comes back also with Rosita coming back, is what's her story? We heard one story, what's the real story?
How long has she been on that rock?
Right.
I know. Just waiting to turn around. How many people did she turn around to before it was them?
Waiting for that right
Have a
breeze.
gun.
It's like a reality TV show.
Yeah.
Every week she turns around and like, oh no, you're not the right people.
Yeah.
Tourists.
Yeah.
I
Honestly, I'm so ready for that story.
right.
I want to know it all.
Same.
Although I deeply wanted it to be Willa, like deeply.
Same.
There was a moment. There was a moment I thought too.
The amount of that I wanted it to be Willa, I was like disappointed that it was Rosita, and I love Rosita, was like how much I wanted it to be Willa.
Willa can be next.
Just like,
Exactly.
come on.
She's
Maybe
two rocks
a
over.
magic rock, yeah.
She's
Something.
2 rocks over.
What were you gonna say, Jess?
Chris said she'll be in the next door.
Mm.
Like I do think if it's going that route, I think it'll be something where it's not revealed until like the very last minute of this episode, because like they've been putting all these puzzle pieces in place, and right now, you know, Wynonna is so far away from Waverly, and Waverly has her own thing that she's dealing with that's going to be happening at the beginning of this next episode. That for them to even kind of come back together, I don't know what's going to happen, but we're going to have to figure those two things out for them to come together.
Well, and we're also, now that I'm thinking about this, it's in so many ways, and what you just said is like all these puzzle pieces are coming together, and in many ways, each person has been challenged with what would you give up to get this thing that you think is most important to you. And Nicole, like, she, you know, we've seen that explicitly. What would you give up? She's like, I'd give up anything to get Waverly back. And the person, you know, Nam was like, would you give up this? And now Wynonna is also being asked to, what would you give up to get Peacemaker back? Are you going to serve up this Rosita, whatever Rosita's story is? You know, Doc is, you know, he's got a lot of things that he's going on. And maybe now he's like, I'm going to give up the whole notion that I'm a renowned gunslinger because I just want to live in peace. Like a lot of them, they're being challenged, you know, like you say that you would do anything for this one person or this one thing. And now they're being challenged and say, oh, really? Anything? Well, in that case, how about this? Would you give up this?
And like to go with that, Nicole, like when we see that the backflash of her talking to Ma'am, at first she says, I'll do anything to save her. But then when Ma'am tells her what she tells her, then she says them. It's like, what did she tell her? But,
and now Wynonna wants this gun back.
Yeah. And to go with all of that, like what you just said, in the reel of Wyatt Earp, like how he was talking about destiny and fate. And it's like, with the puzzle pieces, all these puzzle pieces have been putting it together, and like it's their destinies, I don't know, coming together. And I forget exact, someone else can talk.
Holt also was talking about fate and destiny. That conversation with he and Doc, I honestly, the Holt and Wyatt had those scenes were like so heart-wrenching. To be Doc, to talk about all the things that you've given up, to see the one person that you would have given up everything for and did not get to see the person like late in life that you never got to see grow old, like the most important person in your life, to see them old and talking about something that you missed, all of these things. And then with Holt, and he just says the town is just full of women that would have us die for them. Like, it's not a war. We're not part of this war. And for Doc, the like sort of giving up the idea of being a hero and all of that is sort of, all of that is just like stripped away. And it's like, you're not fighting your own war. You're just a pawn. You're just put in the front line of this war that isn't yours. Your last name's not Earp. So
the Clanton siblings are killing me.
Speaking of pawns, I think that ties to what we brought up earlier with Rosita. Because back, you know, at the point when Wynonna was saying she would kill her last, she needed her to go do the experiments to try to get the stuff to save Nicole. So she was just basically discarding her. and expecting her to do exactly what she needed. And now it appears she needs her again for the nuns to potentially get peacemaking.
I'm so excited to see that dynamic.
Yeah, and how is, as we've all talked about now for the last 4 or 5 episodes, this new, more mature Wynonna or more self-aware? How is she going to deal with that?
Right.
Well, we like see when she sees the picture of Rosita that she's still very much holding on.
Yes.
Very angry.
Very,
still.
yes.
They're angry.
But I mean, do you remember the story of why Rosita was a revenant in the first place?
Just caught in
Wrong
the
place,
middle.
wrong time.
Caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. She, in many ways, and I actually keep going back to it, what Rosita did after 180 years. She's tried to steal the Earp heir. Because she was caught in the wrong place at the wrong time, and now she's this revenant that just keeps progressing. And people are going after Nicole because she made some bad deal after 18 months. I'm like, well, you know what? Rosita's been waiting 180 years to escape, this kind of thing. Like it, but coming back then to so I've been thinking a lot about what each character would give up for the thing that they claim is the most important thing in their life. And generally it's another person. And it's a brutal thing that I've been putting myself through. Like in terms of like the pyramid, if you had to choose between people, who would they start choosing? Like if you really had to give up somebody, what would you start? What's the pyramid? And it's not a fun exercise, but I feel like the writers are maybe putting us, funneling us down and saying, each one of these characters are making decisions about who matters most. And they're making these brutal decisions. And oh my God, I don't know if I want to know what the end state is.
Did Waverly already pick the book? Like, did she already make that choice? That's the other
That's
question.
a brilliant question.
Well, she picked herself, so.
But also, side note, quick question about Rosita though. Do we know, have we seen any revenants since the curse is broken?
No.
So we don't know what has happened to them when the curse
why do the
breaks.
nuns want her?
But is she even a revenant anymore if the curse
Is she
is
even
broken?
Rosita?
Is she just back to being a regular human who's got to live the rest of her life?
I like
she-
That's the other question. Anyways, that was just my one quick thing. But
Oh my gosh.
yeah, my brain is. Oof.
We don't know anything. We literally know nothing.
We can sum it all up perfectly, Terry Ann. That's exactly every Earp
Don't
episode.
know anything.
We don't know anything. We think we do, but we
Nothing.
don't.
Nothing. And I cannot wait to be wrong on everything.
Right?
Man, that coat though. Give me anybody who's like, I'm a bad guy in a good coat. I'm set to go. Like I will follow you almost anywhere.
Yeah.
What a quote. I'm a bad guy in a good coat.
I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
Bad guy.
My life motto.
Yeah, I was gonna say life motto. Life motto.
Yep, that
Love
could
it.
work.
Love it.
Well, we know it's going to be one heck of a ride. That's maybe one of the few things we do know. It being this team of writers, we're going to have one heck of a ride.
And I'm amazed. There are a lot of things I'm watching, or a lot of one-liners that I feel like are indicative of the world we're in right now, but they were written when they had no idea of the world we're in right now. So I knew that those lines aren't in reference to coronavirus or the current, and it's just amazing that I can't remember what line, but there was a line in this past episode that I went, holy crap, that's a direct relation, that's a direct line about coronavirus. And I went, obviously it wasn't. They filmed it, in February before this really was a thing.
And as much hell as we have gone through as Earpers in terms of almost losing the show and getting to here, meaning here at this point in time, how prophetic that they actually did finish filming the full 6th episode. And it's a 2-part story that Emily has said is a good place to break a seal. I mean, what are the odds of that working out? I I mean, imagine if they'd only got to the 5th, and this is where we were left hanging for us. Or think about any other season too. That you know, there's plenty of episodes where a week is tough, and if it had
Yeah.
been months, as an unintended point, it's just so probably Earp with everything else that goes on in our lives with this show. It's one of those things where I go, wow, for all of wrong that happens, this is pretty amazing that these things fell into place from a story point of view for us fans.
Imagine it just ended on Jeremy being like, "Trust us," and like
Oh my
he had to
God.
That's what I
wait like
said.
months.
Yeah,
Ugh.
I still go back to, and I'd have to see which one it was, but one of the panels that I moderated at a con before the fight happened, where I happened to bring up to Emily, gee, wouldn't it have been horrible if the season 3 finale had been the last episode of the show?
Ugh.
I
That's good.
remember that panel.
We're already renewed for season 4. That's why I brought it up, because
Yeah.
we were already renewed for a 4. But I mean, if you think about that garden entrance as being the end, can you even imagine that? I mean, not that we didn't think about it when. So I'm just saying, you know, sometimes, man, there's something kind of helping to at least keep some of these things.
Yeah.
Support the arts, everyone.
Very true.
Agreed.
For sure.
Well, whatever it is, we're going to be ready for it. Come next week. Enjoy watching it, and we certainly will enjoy talking about it. Do stay tuned to our social media, the Earp Sister Feels Twitter account or the Wynonna Earp Pod one. We're going to see if maybe we can do something special next week for our final Earp Sister video of this part of the season. You know, maybe get you folks involved a little more, those of you that are watching. So do stay tuned. We'll kind of keep you appraised, and hopefully we can all keep having some fun. So had a blast. Great to be able to talk to so many friends here and do this, because we just love going down these rabbit holes, don't we?
Always. Always.
There isn't a rabbit hole we don't love going down.
That doesn't like all of my rabbit holes.
So we appreciate you all tuning in, folks, and we will catch you all again next week. We'll be having some fun for sure. So thanks again for tuning in.